Hello, welcome to QUT News.
Hello.
The Prime Minister has issued a blunt warning to Australians supporting Islamic extremism. You will be targeted by police and defence forces. Malcolm Turnbull's comments come as ASIO maintains its heightened terrorism threat levels for large public events.
More than 200 Australians are believed to be working with Islamic State. And the head of ASIO says you are being investigated. Duncan Lewis told a Senate hearing this is a crucial phase in the fight against terrorism. And even if IS is defeated, Australia's terrorism threat will stand.
This is not the end. It's not the beginning of the end. It's more like the end of the beginning.
Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull added a warning that Australian troops in the Middle East will target anyone fighting with IS, including fellow Australians. The threat of terror attacks has already seen security here beefed up at major upcoming events. Suncorp Stadium has changed its security policy. Every bag will be searched before any spectator can gain entry to the venue. And the 2.5 million visitors to Sydney's Vivid Festival will find extra police power on show, adding to the already tight security.
We have got firearm explosive dogs undertaking searches. If we believe a package is suspicious, whether that be a backpack or whatever.
Plainclothes officers will patrol on foot and there'll be a security presence in the air and on the water. Sarah Court, QUT News.
In the UK, police have resumed sharing intelligence information with the United States after key details of the Manchester bombing were leaked to American media. President Trump assured British Prime Minister Theresa May he'd investigate the incident and prosecute those responsible.
As the massive counter-terrorism operation continues across the north of England, Donald Trump was involved in another intelligence embarrassment. The US President assuring Britain's Prime Minister Theresa May there'd be no more leaks of sensitive police material.
I will be making clear to President Trump today that intelligence that is shared between law enforcement agencies must remain secure.
A total of 8 people have now been arrested in connection with the Manchester Arena attack.
And initial searches of premises have revealed items that we believe are very important to the investigation.
Bomb disposal experts have searched an address in nearby Wigan, police placing a security cordon around the area. At the same time, a floral tribute keeps growing in Manchester's St Anne's Square.
Just really feel it everywhere. Even though it's been like a couple of days now, it's kind of very present.
Queen Elizabeth visited the Royal Manchester Children's Hospital, meeting some of the young victims of Monday night's attack.
Very interesting how everybody has united, haven't they? Yeah.
She was also introduced to the first paramedic on the scene. 27 major trauma centres remain on standby, prepared for another possible terrorist attack. Meanwhile, Greater Manchester Police and members of the community came together again to honour the 22 people killed. Lexi Haggard, QUT News.
Hundreds of Indigenous Australians have come together from all over the country, meeting at one of their most sacred locations to mark Sorry Day. The elders faced Uluru as they discussed amendments to Australia's constitution to better support Indigenous recognition. The final statement may push for an Indigenous advisory body in federal parliament. Queensland delegate and Cape York leader Noel Pearson says his people must be given a voice in their political destiny. That was just one of countless Sorry events held across Australia. This year has special significance. It's 20 years since the Bringing Them Home report into the generations of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children stolen from their families.
They gathered in West End to reflect on the painful history of the stolen generations. Orley Park had been the site of Cranbrook House, an Aboriginal girls' hostel.
Every Aboriginal family in Australia had been deeply impacted during the era of the stolen generation.
It's estimated that between 10 to 33% of all Indigenous children were separated from their families.
Despite the end of forced removals in the early 70s, the continued separation of children from their families through child welfare and juvenile courts is a growing concern. In a crisis dubbed the second stolen generation, Indigenous children are nearly 10 times more likely to be in out-of-home care than non-Indigenous.
This is a blight on us as a community.
Author Rhonda Collard Spratt was taken from her family in 1954. She says the government still isn't doing enough to help the Indigenous community.
They've turned a blind eye and a deaf ear. Our voices go through one ear and out the other. That's why we're forever protesting.
Clearly still an issue causing pain. Jessie Gentle, QUT News.
If you're in the market for your first home, State Treasurer Curtis Pitt is urging you to buy before June 30. That's the deadline to take advantage of an extra $5,000 on top of the existing new homeowners grant.
This is a new housing development site at Pallara in Brisbane's southwest. People like Diane Lua have been able to save enough to build here. She's taken advantage of the $82.5 million the government has granted new owners in the past year.
Yeah, it's a really affordable area. Obviously, the grant helped us a lot. As a first home owner, you need as much help as you can.
But for others, time is running out.
What we're seeing is the opportunity for families to come through and first home buyers to find an affordable price point to enter the market.
Come the end of the financial year, the first homeowners grant will drop from $20,000 to $15,000.
It's very difficult, and land availability at this proximity to the Brisbane CBD is scarce, there's no doubt about that.
House and land packages here sell well below the medium home price for Brisbane. First-time owners like Diane make up nearly half the buyers at Pallara. The boosted grant has helped 5,500 other Queenslanders since its introduction. But applications must be signed before the June deadline. Ben Downey, QUT News.
Balinese prosecutors have revealed they considered sentencing Schapelle Corby to death, but relented due to her young age. She was just 27 at the time of her arrest. News Corp journalist Cindy Wachner has followed the case since it started. She's keeping a close eye on Corby on the eve of her return to Australia.
Schapelle's remained holed up inside her house. She doesn't want to come out. She's apparently terrified of the media waiting outside.
Authorities may allow Corby to sign her parole papers just hours before deportation. She's scheduled to touch down in Brisbane tomorrow after 12 years in Indonesia.
Some lucky Brisbane high school students have had a hands-on lesson in supersonic flight. They experienced what it was like to fly an Air Force fighter jet without even leaving the ground.
It was a lesson they won't forget in a hurry. These aspiring Top Guns from Brisbane State High, taking the controls in an F-18 Super Hornet simulator.
It's really, really cool. A lot of fun. So awesome.
I didn't have plans before, but this is really crazy. I'll have to consider this now.
It's all part of a new RAFF recruiting campaign.
The software actually allows us to, with 95% accuracy, replicate the F-18 Super Hornet. So it's very realistic. The only thing is that you don't feel the G-forces.
The cockpits used in these simulators are the real deal too, previously used in US fighter jets. This F-18 flight simulator is the first of its kind, giving kids the opportunity to see what it's really like inside an Air Force fighter jet.
It was really amazing, really realistic, lots of fun.
If you land face down in the water, it actually rolls you over onto your back.
The experience also gave students who don't feel the need for speed an idea of what types of jobs they can do in the Air Force.
Being an air traffic controller in the Air Force is really different to being an air traffic controller in the civilian world, because we get to do all these extra things as well.
Taking off on a possible new career path. Brittany Graham, QUT News.
From the weekend hobbyist and the home DIYer to the most experienced of enthusiasts, they've all gathered for the Brisbane Woodworking show at the RNA. The event showcases some of Australia's most impressive and precise woodcarving artists.
Whether you're sanding, staining, or planing, it's all happening at the Woodworking show. And it's not just boys and their toys. Sandra Scottney has been carving masterpieces for 30 years and says she uses the age of the wood to shape and inspire her creations.
The feel and the smell of the wood and just the different variations in colours, grains and you name it.
Woodworking is now part of high school manual arts curriculums.
I love it really because I couldn't do it outside, so it's the only opportunity I get.
These are Japanese carving tools. They're an art form in themselves and create unique carvings.
So all their tools are designed around looking, feeling smooth and visually beautiful.
Unlike Western tools, his cut on the pull stroke and leave an immaculately smooth finish. The passion and dedication is overwhelming as artists from across Australia showcase their woodworking talents. Anyone who comes to visit the exhibition might just pick up a trick or two, or even a pair of chopsticks. The Brisbane Woodworking exhibition runs all weekend. Did you hear about the wooden car?
No. Wouldn't go. It wouldn't go.
Lexi Kell, QUT News.
A young couple from Perth had a very fortunate day, winning $200,000 from a scratchy. The couple's moment of joy was captured as it happened on the newsagent's CCTV camera. Already, they have big plans for the windfall.
Now and work less because we both do like huge hours, like 60 to 70 hours a week, and it's just taken such a toll on us.
The young man says he was homeless just 5 years ago. The engaged couple now hopes to buy a house.
Recapping our main story, the Prime Minister and ASIO boss warns Australians supporting Islamic extremism will be targeted by police and defence forces.
And still ahead, stunning new images of the planet Jupiter. Continuing QUT News, terrorism was high on the agenda as Donald Trump met fellow NATO leaders in Brussels. The US President used the summit to call on European nations to spend more of their budgets on defence, but there were also some embarrassing moments.
Donald Trump pushed himself to the front of the NATO leaders' meeting in Brussels, literally, brushing aside the Prime Minister of Montenegro, Duško Marković. The awkwardness continued with this prolonged handshake with the new French President Emmanuel Macron. The US leader then sent a clear message to his fellow NATO leaders. He called on them to spend more money on defence, especially in the wake of the Manchester attack, to enhance security and crack down on immigration.
Wherever they exist in our societies, we must drive them out and never, ever let them back in.
President Trump also called for NATO members to share financial burdens and pay back what he called their debts to the United States. He says it's not fair to American taxpayers.
But 23 of the 28 member nations are still not paying what they should be paying and what they are supposed to be paying for their defense.
But NATO officials say that's already being considered.
We have to invest in defense not just to please the United States, but we have to invest in European defence because it is in our own interest to do so.
In a nod to the president, NATO leaders have formed a symbolic coalition against the Islamic State. During the summit, memorials to both 9/11 and the Berlin Wall were unveiled. The next stop on the president's foreign tour is Sicily, where he will attend the G7 summit. Lily Greer, QUT News.
A former Greek Prime Minister has been hurt when a bomb exploded in his car. Lucas Papademos sustained non-life-threatening injuries. The blast happened at a busy intersection in Athens. Mr. Papademos was caretaker Prime Minister from 2011 until 2012 and was a supporter of the nation's divisive austerity measures. It's the most dramatic act of political violence in Greece in several years.
They usually make people laugh, but clowns in Peru have held a street parade to honour one of their own. The annual event takes place to commemorate the death of a local hero known as the Clown of the Poor. Hundreds of performers in various costumes took to the streets of the capital, Lima. This year marks the 30th anniversary of the colourful event. NASA has captured some stunning new images of Jupiter. Rivers of ammonia and giant cyclones were observed as the Juno spacecraft passed the giant planet.
The sounds of an alien world captured 750 million kilometres from Earth. NASA's Juno spacecraft capturing the breathtaking phenomena of our largest planetary neighbour. Scientists are amazed by the findings.
Juno, in many ways, is looking inside of Jupiter for the first time and close up and personal. The general theme of our discoveries is really how different Jupiter looks from what we expected.
They thought Jupiter's atmosphere would be boring. What they found shows that's far from the truth.
And when you look from the pole, it looks totally different. In fact, if you look at this picture and somebody had shown it to you a few years ago, I don't think anybody would have guessed this is Jupiter.
The view from the South Pole reminiscent of Vincent van Gogh's Starry Night. Cyclones 1,400 kilometres across dotting the skies. The data was collected from the first of Juno's 11 flybys of Jupiter. The next in July will pass straight over the planet's big red spot, a storm that's been raging for centuries. Scientists are confident the research will reveal more about how our planet was formed.
So this is making us rethink how giant planets work, not just in our own system, but giant planets are really important throughout the galaxy and the universe.
Another chapter in humanity's journey to the stars. Bryce Heaton, QUT News.
Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg has returned to Harvard. A dropout of the university, Zuckerberg addressed the latest graduates. He called on them to tackle the big issues facing society.
It is time for our generation defining great works. How about stopping climate change before we destroy the planet and getting millions of people involved?
Zuckerberg finally received his Harvard degree, awarded an honorary doctorate.
A foolish hunter has narrowly escaped death after being attacked by a black bear in Canada. Richard Wesley was preparing to fire an arrow at the bear when it started to charge. He yelled to scare it off, then tried to whack it with a bow. He then grabbed his camera and fled.
Should have shot him a long time ago. Scare me, that guy.
Somehow Wesley came away with just a bruised elbow.
Some of the world's strongest men have taken part in an unusual event. 25 competitors gathered in southern Germany for the Alpine Stonelifting Championship. They attempted to lift a 254-kilogram slab of concrete as high as possible. Spectators participated in other local traditions, eating sausage and drinking beer. A Bavarian stonelifter was crowned this year's champion. In AFL, Geelong scored an amazing come-from-behind goal in their win against Port Adelaide. But Port agreed with an umpire's call that robbed them of an almost certain win.
It looked like a sure goal for Port Adelaide, but the 30-second shot clock expired. Midfielder Charlie Dixon was told to play on by umpires. The Port coach was philosophical.
Unfortunately, they got it 100% probably correct as far as right on the dot. I don't think I've ever seen it before, but that doesn't matter. The umpire's got it right.
For Geelong, however, Brownlow medalist Patrick Dangerfield saved the day, scoring a last-minute goal for victory. The Cats won 81-79 in a two-point thriller. In the other games in round 10, the Sydney Swans are versing Hawthorn at the SCG. The Hawks looking for their fourth straight win. The Brisbane Lions will face Collingwood in Melbourne. Mark Zita, QUT News.
Queensland and New South Wales continue their preparation for next week's State of Origin opener. And for the Maroons, it's a new team dynamic.
For the first time in 18 years, Jonathan Thurston will sit out of the Origin opener. The injured 5'8" was ruled unfit for next Wednesday's match. Speculation is that Michael Morgan will open as 5'8" ahead of Anthony Milford.
We just want Milf to play his natural game. You know, pick two things that you're really good at, that you do at the Broncos, and just replicate that.
On the other side of the border, the Blues are taking a day off. Fullback James Tedesco is enjoying some stability from signing with the Roosters after a rocky start to the season with West Tigers.
I think just to have those options outside me will take a bit of heat off me and be able to use them whenever I can. So, it's obviously confidence boosting being the number one.
There's just a few sleeps to go. Lily Greer, QUT News.
Liverpool manager Jurgen Klopp has spent time getting to know Australia. The eccentric German has learned about Indigenous culture in Sydney, trying some traditional dancing and the didgeridoo. Although he admits he needs a little more practice with the spear.
If I would have been the main hunter in whichever group, no chances of wife.
His skills with the boomerang weren't much chop either.
Samantha Cheney has all the weather details next.
And pop-up science for all ages.
Hello, time to take a look at the weather. It was a wonderful day today in Brisbane with lots of sun and a light scattering of clouds. Across the southeast, we reached a comfortable top of 25 in Brisbane and Ipswich. The Gold Coast and Sunshine Coast just 1 degree behind. Around the nation Saturday, a top of 21 for Sydney. Canberra, a low of 2 degrees up to 16. An 18-degree peak in Melbourne, Darwin hot and 33. Back to Queensland, most centres should reach the mid to high 20s. Mackay, Rockhampton and Bundaberg all 25. 28 in Cairns, Mount Isa and Longreach around the 30-degree mark. On Moreton Bay, winds will be 10 to 15 knot easterlies in the early afternoon. Small seas below ½ a metre. And the sun will set just after 5. The outlook for both coasts, partly cloudy and a chance of showers. A pleasant top of 23 predicted. Brisbane, over the next 3 days, a top of 24 degrees and some rain likely on Saturday. Similar conditions on Sunday and a top of 26 on Monday with plenty of warmth and sunshine. That's the weather now. Back to you, Reece.
Thanks, Samantha. Now to the last of our stories on this year's World Science Festival. The event was about making science accessible, and what better way to do that than taking it to the streets?
3, 2, 1.
A 2-day street science extravaganza. The streets of Southbank transformed into one enormous laboratory.
I would like to do biological science and study endangered animals.
There's such an opportunity for everyone to be a scientist, especially at World Science Festival.
And this year, perhaps the most important yet. Australia is losing the race in terms of science education. Only 16% of Australian university graduates will have qualifications in science, technology or mathematics.
Australia is behind the 8 ball. As far as developed countries go, our education of science, of maths, of any of those technologies is just not where it should be.
A statement echoed by Queensland's chief scientist.
We are failing our children in not having a system that allows them to fulfil their potential.
This festival allows the kids to experiment and to be inspired. But they aren't alone under the microscope.
When they're booking their children, parents always ask me, when do you have separate adult classes? So at the moment we're running full-time and they're booked out.
It's hoped that the street stalls will encourage everyone to consider a career in Australian science before it all goes up in smoke. Reece D'Alessandro, QUT News.
That brings you up to date with QUT News. Goodbye for now.
And we close with images from the Vivid Light Festival in Sydney. Goodbye.